very warm welcome to all of you who are joining us for this special edition of LeaderSpeak. We have a very special guest all the way from the UK, and we are going to talk about all things VFX, all things post, all things, all the exciting content and how it's created with the help of Outpost VFX. We have Duncan McWilliam, who's joining us all the way from the UK today to speak to us about his journey, the company, and also all the changes that have actually happened with the industry for the last couple of years. We'll also have a conversation relating to what might we expect in the next few years as the industry continues to evolve and continues to get transformed with all the technological changes, business model changes, macroeconomic changes, as well as the whole advent of AI and gaming and lots of fun stuff. With that, Duncan, a very warm welcome to have you join us today. As you know, LeaderSpeak goes across to more than 100,000 people as part of our community. This community is dominated by leaders, CXOs, thought leaders, innovators within the supply chain, within the entertainment supply chain. And I'm sure all of the members who are sort of tuning in to this podcast are going to be super keen to know your journey and your experiences. Welcome.
Thanks, Atul. And you set the bar quite high in terms of expectation now. I've got 100,000 people to impress somehow, so I hope you haven't stitched me up there, mate.
I'm sure you'll do great, and we're going to have a roaring conversation.
Yeah, super. So where do you want me to start?
We usually start with an elevator pitch about the company. So Outpost VFX, what does it do? How did it come about? And what are the key aspects that you're really focused on as a company? That would be a great place to start.
Yeah, no worries. Well, okay, so I haven't done an elevator pitch for a long time, since our last investment round, I think. But I think Outpost obviously is a visual effects company with in the higher tiers of AAA quality feature film and streaming TV production. So we work on most of the titles you see in the theatres and on the premium streamers in your home, and we work across the full skill set, from environments, creature animation, effects, you name it. If you can't film it, we can build it. We tend to partner up as what we would call ourselves a mid-tier scale vendor. So we're about 650 people, 4 studios across 3 countries. We tend to find ourselves alongside ILM or Framestore or Weta on films like we've delivered recently, such as Wicked, Sinners. So that's the kind of position we're at in the market. And where we've really come from is, I used to be a visual effects supervisor myself. I used to work at Technicolor and moving picture company and work my way up through the ranks there, and then thought I would build a company from a more artist-led perspective that really put the culture of the people at the forefront of the company ethos, alongside technology and trying out new things and new ways of doing things faster, cheaper, better within the business. So we come from fairly humble beginnings back in 2013. It was just me and a laptop and wandering around the streets and pubs of London looking for some commercials work. And it grew and it grew. And at that time, the not streaming wars at that point, but certainly the streamers, specifically Netflix, had really kicked off. And we were starting to work in independent film, and the streamers started to not replace independent film, but start to fund that market sector. And so we piggybacked off that. Interestingly, it was the same year that Milk were founded and DNEG TV were founded and Outpost founded. And so everyone's gone at different rates and scales and all the rest of it. And our sort of journey started back then and has just grown with that streaming industry and with the quality of people we were able to attract. So that brings us, forward now to 4 studios, 3 countries, quite a large headcount, working on really premium content, and really trying to push the boundaries of a technological platform that we work off as well. So that's not an elevator pitch, is it? That's quite a long, rambling story, but
it's a long elevator ride. But hey, it's a very tall building that you guys have built. And look, I was curious about some of the projects that you talked about, including Wicked. Just iconic ones. Very very sort of very large projects. talk a little bit about some of the projects that you're really proud of, in the last
Yeah,
15 years, and then also the strongest relationships. I think again, this business is about trust, about the quality of work that again gets people back into the same sort of chemistry. If you can
yeah,
talk a
yeah.
little bit about that'd be awesome.
No, absolutely. I think we've got some really pivotal pieces. I think one that's important to bring up, it was during COVID, we'd won News of the World with Tom Hanks and directed by Paul Greengrass. And that was a big one for Universal to trust us with when we talk about relationships. There has to be a job that suddenly you're trusted to take the responsibility for delivering. And during COVID, right, they could have split that up and handed it back out to multiple vendors, but they trusted us to deliver on it. And I think it was a real credit to the team how we managed that. And that was a tricky show. There was a heck of a lot of stuff in there. We've got horses falling down mountainsides with carts and more horses tumbling after them. And you've got rivers and herds of cattle and the whole Wild West landscape. Absolutely impeccable work done whilst flipping over to a remote working environment across 2 different countries, trying to do screenings with a very exacting director. And, that's the kind of film that could take the relationship either way. But what we found is that went so well that we found ourselves working with Paul Greengrass as a go-to director on all his work now. We're doing a film with him at the moment, and we previously just did The Lost Bus with Matthew McConaughey. That, I don't know if you've seen The Lost Bus, I would advise everyone go and see it. It's amazing.
Wow.
Seamless visual effects. You believe you are in those forest fires. It's so tense. If you've got a heart condition, don't go and watch this movie.
Wow.
It is so tense the whole way through. And that's a relationship that's been going since, about 8 or 9 years now with Paul Greengrass, and he just keeps coming back for more. So you're right. It is all about relationships. It's about delivering every time. It's never going to be a smooth ride ever in creating and finishing a film. You have to understand that you're there to help solve problems and get to the solution together. And ultimately you're judged on what comes out the other end. So that relationship needs to be really strong to keep doing that again and again. And I would say, 70-80% of our work is all repeat business, and the rest is mostly word of mouth, actually. So reputation is everything.
I can totally see that in the journey. So let's move to the journey itself. I'm guessing there was a specific day that you suddenly thought, hey, I should move out of MPC and I should start Outpost. What was
There were
that
a few
moment?
days. Yeah,
There were a few days.
it
Okay.
wasn't just one day I thought I should move
Okay.
out of MPC. I can now say. But yeah, no, I mean, yes,
What
I'll
was
be as
what was the
professional as I
trigger
can about
point?
that.
Yeah, I was curious about what was the trigger point, what was the motivation. That was one, and then the scaling up journey, right? Was it sort of linear? Was it like a step function, saying, oh my God, we've just landed this big contract. We've now got to scale up very quickly. So how was that?
So I'll do one at a time. So the trigger to set up Outpost, I guess, is the question, right? What made me want to go and do that first? So I'd been in London. I'd been a VFX soup in big commercials and done that for a while. Moved over to LA, helped set up the LA facility, again, commercials. And then had a young family, so came back to the UK and had just realised how remote you can work by being out in LA, working with people in Chicago and the team back in the UK, and saw the expense of setting a studio up in London meant I couldn't really service the independent film market that I had some contacts in. And MPC didn't want to do the 300 grand jobs. It was too small, but I could with just me and a few others. And so that was really the catalyst moment. It was like, oh, there's a market to service here. We can take our generalist workflows that we did in commercials and apply them to underfunded films and still make a profit. And a team of 20 could deliver a 300 shot shark movie. And those, you have to pick the right films. So that was the kind of catalyst moment. But I had to put it not in London to keep the overheads low, and initially drew on Bournemouth University as a kind of a source of graduates coming through to do the more simple work, as a good proving ground to have good recruitment from. and then remoting in different artists. And this was 2013. This was long before remote work became a thing, but we were doing it back then. God, I forget the software we used to use to do it. But anyway, before Teradici and all the rest of it. So that's kind of where that started. So that was the impetus to leave MPC and do it on my own. And there's a cultural piece as well, where I saw a lot of knowledge leak out of MPC when I was there, just because people either got a bit ignored or didn't have a career path that they were particularly on, or felt overworked, a bit crushed, whatever. And so I, as an artist myself, I thought, well, if I set it up in an image of what I wanted to retain the knowledge in the company. It's basically the most important thing you've got. All those computers and software sat on their own won't really do anything, will they? So it's the people at the core of it all. And I wanted to make sure I had a culture that retained and drew in quality people. And that was another reason I left MPC and set it up in a different image. So that was that. What was the second question? I've forgotten it.
The second question was the scaling up. I mean, you have multiple offices now.
Okay.
Was that like a step function with suddenly big projects, or was it a linear sort of smooth ride?
We've never, what they would call, landed a whale and suddenly gone, oh my God, now we need to deliver it. We've kind of incrementally grown, whether that was when it was commercials and then became commercials and TV, and then film started landing. We weren't suddenly winning like 10 million quid awards. It was really incremental, but the sort of exponential growth would be doubling from, £150,000 turnover year one, double that every single year for 9 years. And that did get us up to 40 million, across that journey. So it looks like we just suddenly appeared, but we really just doubled. Wow. COVID knocked us flat, doubled twice out of COVID. And then the strikes absolutely took the fun out of all life for another year. Now we're back on the growth path. So, but yeah, we didn't have one big. It was. I'm not exactly sure what a step function is, but I assume that means a gradual growth. Does it?
No, it's a sudden growth. Sudden
growth, is it? Okay.
Growth spurts of sorts.
No, and I think the way visual effects worked, let's say in the 90s and noughties, is very different to now. It's a much more cautious industry. Work is spread not far and wide, but it's spread amongst trusted partners in smaller bundles. So we'll maybe have 22 to £3 million jobs instead of 20 million pound jobs, because the market has been tested and failed in giving too much to any one person or any one client. Whereas I think it would have been wonderful back in the late 90s when Harry Potter came to town, and that's what built the really big companies now, because someone had to just pony up and do it. I would love someone to just say that, but they don't need us to suddenly grow, because Framestore and ILM have got that sewn up here. So we can only ever incrementally improve.
Understood. No, that's fascinating. And Duncan, man, having a doubling of revenues for 9 years, the compounding that could do, that's a rocket that you're talking about. Amazing. Congratulations on that journey.
Well, yes, although it did get shot down like 2 or 3 times by the world and the world events, which is a very humbling experience. So we still find ourselves, we haven't broken through our best ever yet, but we will this year coming. But but equally, I think that needs to be, for anyone looking at starting up their own business, you've got to be very careful about growth over profit in the current market. Back then with investment, the growth was fine because the profit could follow. But then when strikes come along and kill the market, you can't get back to the profit and you haven't got the stash on your balance sheet. So that's a caution to anyone going for double-digit growth all the time. I think what's really important now is to look at the way the market's settled, about 30% less than it was in 2022, and say you need to know what part of that market you add value to and how to be profitable, to reinvest, to strengthen your balance sheet, to prepare for another downturn or another union action, and run a very pragmatic business. And I do think post-COVID, everyone went for scale because the content providers couldn't make enough. They just couldn't make enough stuff. So everything's tempered down somewhat since then.
Understood. So let's talk a little bit about the, in the best years, how would you describe the specialization? Saying that, hey, you know what, Outpost VFX, we do this really, really well.
Yeah, right.
how, what's the body of specialization that, and I can understand that, it gets defined a little bit during pressure times by the work that's available. So
Yeah.
you, in pressure times, you may not be able to always choose the kind of work that, is coming your way. But at the peak of your journey, what would be your calling card from a
Yeah.
specialization perspective?
Okay. This will sound dull because you want me to say like some awesome effect or whatever. The real specialization that we identified early on would be client service.
Uh-huh.
Client service. Make it a good experience. Be honest, be open, be transparent. Bring the problem up as it happens, not 2 weeks down the road. Don't give people surprises. Let them know if it's going well or
Hmm.
badly. Manage expectations.
Hmm.
Because if, and I'll get to our actual real specializations like in visual sense in a minute, but
Yeah.
if you watch a movie,
Yeah.
can you tell me which shots were done by which company while you're in the cinema?
Yeah.
Totally impossible, right? You can
Impossible.
never say, oh, that's an ILM shot, that's an Outpost
That's
shot.
right.
You just can't.
Yeah.
So what we specialize in is making the shot the director wants. That's
Hmm.
the specialism, really. Now, we obviously do loads more environment work than historically we did creature work, but that's changing at the moment. We're doing a lot more creature work now.
Right.
So my kind of point, I'm not trying to be facetious, but my point is, if you can't tell me which brand created which shot,
Right.
that can't be your specialism. Your specialism must be the way you do it, what that process is like, what your price is like as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But ultimately, causing your client the least stress possible, giving them the best experience possible is most likely to get you the next show, which is really how the whole industry works.
That's so true, actually. Again, and totally understand that. Just that working philosophy as a working principle of sort.
Yeah. But and I'll answer the proper question as well, which I suppose was which part of the image do we specialize in? Because we came from a self-funded organic growth, the place we started doing movies is always horror, right? Horror is cheap. It's not too exacting. You can get
Mm,
away with a bit more.
mm,
And so it tended to be environment work, gore, digital makeup, prosthetic enhancement, things like that.
mm,
And then we moved on to sharks, which is actually quite advanced, but they don't emote. So you don't need really advanced controls on a shark. They're quite simple. The water's quite complex, but that's okay. And then environments obviously are everywhere and in everything. So we did a lot of period dramas, a lot of beauty work and digital makeup, and then build up into creatures. So The Watchmen was the first proper, well, that's not true. 47 Meters Down was a shark movie. It was brilliant. I
mm,
thought it was brilliant, still do. We did all of that, Solvender way back. And then we got onto Watchmen and machine gunned a herd of buffalo had to be machine gunned to death out the back of a van
mm.
with a 50 caliber machine gun. And that was a massive sequence for us to jump in and do, but we did it. And that was a step change. I'm going to use your terminology now.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah.
Understood. Understood. No, that's fascinating. And again, all of that actually sort of makes sense in terms of just the evolution of the work that has happened
Mm,
inside Outpost VFX. So let's talk about the years which were tough, right? We talked about COVID. We
mm.
talked about strikes, and how was that going through? I mean, again, just both of those had very different impact and effect.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, blimey. Gosh, which one's right? Which years weren't tough is a better way of putting that. Because don't forget, we had Brexit, right? So let's start with
Oh,
Brexit. Everyone's
oh,
forgotten about Brexit. Brexit's still an absolute nightmare because we had such a strong relationship with all our European workforce. So we
right.
had 30% of our staff were Spanish, French, Italian, and many still are, but that kind of stopped there. And then the freedom of movement thing ended. And that was really miserable. It didn't hugely affect us economically, but it
Hmm.
did mean we couldn't offer as many job opportunities to the international community. And I think as a country, we lost out massively creatively on that, part one.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
was a very silly thing to do that I still think is damaging the country now.
yeah.
Um, then obviously COVID came along, we pivoted to that. I mean, we have a lovely culture with exceptional people who go above and beyond at Outpost. And yeah, we were up to 900 and, oh no, sorry, I've jumped too far ahead. We were about 150 people at the start of COVID, I think, and we were just going into our first private equity investment round. That's right. And so all the investors pulled out and ran away because they're like, holy, no one's filming TV, so we're not going to invest in this. And I was like, no, now you should invest now, right? Because then they're going to make loads.
That's
And
right.
I'll get to that. But one investor came on that journey with us and has been hugely supportive of us ever since. But that was just very, very difficult on a human and people front. Luckily, the government did step up with the furlough, which was epically good. You look at Canada and a lot of other countries where people were not supported in the same way. We're paying for it now, and we're about to pay for it a bit more with Rachel Reeves. Whatever she says in a couple of weeks, going to cost us more. But I think it was a right thing to do to support people through that. And it helped a company like, if we didn't have furlough, we'd have had to let people go, and the company could have easily folded at that time.
Wow.
So a lot of solidarity. Universal trusted us to keep delivering, even with all the stress on that big News of the World show, which we weren't huge at the time, so that carried us quite well through, and a few other very loyal clients at the time got us through that. And then we had 2 immense boom years where we couldn't recruit quick enough. We got Los Angeles studio up and running towards the end of COVID. We got private equity investment to bolster our Montreal studio and to push hiring, and people, the phone just kept ringing. Sales was easy. People phoned and said, I've got this show, it needs to be done by this time, can you do it? And you would say yes, but it's rush pricing, and so we could actually make some money and grow, and that was all going pretty well, actually. So we doubled and doubled again. And then the strikes were the worst. So they were worse than COVID and worse than Brexit put together. Strikes were the worst because it was the industry tearing itself apart. So I've got things to say on the Screen Actors Guild and the way that all went. It hasn't really benefited anyone at all still now. And how long it went on for, and how long it continues to have a ramification. And it's not just the strikes, it's the strikes were a catalyst for a complete market correction, because the streamers were overproducing, had committed to significant long-term contracts with actors and writers and what have you. And I think they got themselves in a pickle and needed to have a reason to get out of it. And so it's just a giant market reset, a big cyclic reset. And so I think our lights have just turned off. They have. They've just turned off. Sorry about that. If I wave my arm, they'll come back on. So yeah, the strikes were the bigger, more damaging thing, but the market needed a correction anyway. And you look at any market that gets very, very, very frothy and buoyant, it will correct. It will chop out 30, 40% of the competition, 30% of the demand. And then the supply will have to correct to feed the demand. Like that, this isn't rocket science, is it? But that's very hard to do. And it meant we had to downscale hugely during that. I mean, if you look at any graph of revenue, it literally just falls off a cliff. So we at one point went from, I believe we had like 950 globally employed at Outpost, and through layoff and types of furlough and what have you, we ended up with 250 within 3 months later, and then steadily grew up, then went down, then grew up. And the only way to manage that culturally is being honest, showing everyone the graphs, showing them the revenue falling off, showing them the overhead of the buildings, the cost, and hoping people can understand and hang in there. We followed 3 strategies. The first was to preserve our capacity, because we thought it couldn't possibly last that long. So we tried to hold the crew for as long as we could, and we asked people to take a salary reduction voluntarily to support that length of time, which they did, which is amazing because they do not have to by law at all. But everyone did, and that bought us a few more months. And then we had to go from preserve capacity to preserve capability. So we had to start letting people properly go. But we kept the leaders so that we could rebuild and have the capability. And then after another 3-4 months of that, we realized, oh, the market is still not coming back. Let's survive. So we went capacity, capability, survival. And then survival was, what is the fewest number of people you can then rebuild a business from? It turns out it's quite a lot of people actually in a specialist business. And of course, you can't just get out of leases and get rid of long-term contracts in that respect, but there's no contracts coming the other way. So you've got to carry that, which is why it's really good we never accumulated any debt in our lives, ever. So we're a debt-free business. We didn't have debt to pay, or we had equity.
Okay.
And the beauty of equity is you only pay it back if you can sell the business one day, which is, and our backers, YFM, supported us through that, provided extra funding, absolutely essential.
Yep.
And the plan was use that funding to be in the healthiest possible position when the market starts to return. And we've really seen that market return very strongly in the UK this year. The UK is the busiest it's been. Oh, it's 100% busier than it's ever been in the history of the company. The Montreal tax credit was another massive blow. So you've got the strikes, you've got a market correction, and then Montreal decided without consultation overnight, just going to go dunk, that's gone. So they pulled that, which was disastrous actually, on top of everything else that had happened, and continues to be a real problem for the filmmaking community in Montreal, because the incentives are better now in other countries, and we're seeing the work go to other countries because economics will drive Hollywood's decision making, right? And so that's not to be, anyone who had a Montreal studio, you got Brexit, COVID, writers' strike, market correction, bang, Montreal as well. That was just the last challenge that we needed.
So that is absolutely fascinating, Duncan. And I almost saw the movie in my head as you were describing the journey, because it's exactly what you talked about. It's all of these challenges, one after the other. The craziest one that was self-inflicted was the strikes. Even in our observations, we track productions and production financing on a daily basis. Every single day, Vitrina tracks production financing, development financing. So we kind of have a pulse of which countries are producing, which countries are financing, which countries are commissioning and green lighting. I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that the strikes have somehow helped the cause. In fact, when you do the strikes, when Hollywood has no choices to flight the work anywhere else, then the strikes could be successful. But when Hollywood has competitors in the UK or in Canada or in Brazil or in South America and other parts of the world, the streamers are just going to sort of flight the work. Their budgets. And you're right. I mean, it was a catalyst to a lot of the correction. That was the overproduction that might have happened in certain segments.
Yeah, that's right. And it's a tricky one. So unions are tricky. I would love visual effects to be part of a union body so that we had representation to avoid immense price erosion, to have working standards. We pay overtime, but you don't have to. We pay globally high overtime because we have a people project, right? A cultural piece that we believe is ethical, but you don't have to do that. You can't have a union in a multinational environment because, like you say, you can be unionized in America. It works for IATSE, but it doesn't work for the actors in America because, of course, you can just fly to Europe and shoot there. So you price yourself out with the union as well. So unions can be really useful. And I think visual effects has wanted a union for so long for better workers' rights, workers' hours. Pay is not terrible in visual effects, I'll be honest. It's comparable with other decent industries, but the working hours can be unreasonable. And I think that's the responsibility of each company to set its own cultural standards around that and to educate the overall community of, we work in film, it's a deadline-based, creative-driven subject matter, which will have long hours at the end of a crunch period, and there's no getting around that. And that's true of lawyers preparing a case or accountants doing the financial year end. Like, everyone has to crunch. But what the actors and the writers did there was, I think, give false hope to first of all, the mega actors get paid no matter what, enormous amounts. So they're not really involved. They don't live in the real world. But the jobbing actors in the middle, the extras and everything else, were made to feel really paranoid about AI stealing their jobs. And they're the ones that held out the longest. And they're the ones that are least likely to benefit from it. Because now that the salaries have gone up 7% this year, 4% next year, or whatever the minimum base is,
Yeah.
that money's disappearing from visual effects. So then, or it's disappearing from the stack, right? So where's
Right.
the money going? And
Yeah.
streamers aren't, you don't want to pay more for your streaming subscription, and you don't want to pay more for your movie tickets. So where's the money coming from? Well,
Right.
other departments, but not the top actors, right? They still take
Yeah.
more than ever. And then
Hmm.
the 2,000 people below the line have the same amount of money to split between all 2,000 of them. So where's the money coming from? Well, don't know.
Hmm.
It's a
And in
bit
that,
puzzling.
yeah. No, that I totally agree with that part. Duncan, one of the observations, and you tell me if you're sort of feeling that as well in the UK or in some of your other centers, is that even when work has returned back, the budgets or the type of work or the type of projects which are getting greenlit and financed,
Yeah.
there's a material difference that we can see, right?
Yes.
There is a both during COVID and post strike or during strike, we saw more of factual content be produced. And I don't know if you've sort of seen a material shift in either budgets or
Yeah.
in terms of the type of work that's happening today vis-a-vis, let's say, pre-strike.
Um, well, we don't get involved in non-scripted or factual, so I can't really comment
Yeah.
on the growth of that. Although I did hear the other day that the UK watch more unscripted reality TV nonsense than any other country in the world, but I can believe that. Um, so in terms of the kind of work we do, what's really hard for me to judge is I think our reputation and brand has grown across the
Yeah.
last 3 years. And if you look at our website, you'll see the change in the titles and the types of work and the volume of it we're doing and the
Yeah.
type of work within it. So what's weird is the market has definitely shrunk 30%.
Hmm.
The average budget for the average show has come down, and there are no more $350 million tent poles. Maybe Disney will do some, but most people have said we're not going much above 130 all in. So it's kind of halved the mega shows.
Okay.
And I think the viewing public as well, to some degree, got superhero fatigue and are quite happy to see. I mean, look how successful Sinners was, for example. It's a vampire movie, and it did so well. And then you've got Wicked, which is a tentpole, but you're not as many of these movies coming out. So there's a lower volume of work for us to service. I don't know how many companies, I'm going to say off the top of my head, 10 or 15 visual effects companies are bankrupt. So
Yeah.
the supply demand sort of maybe will settle. We'll
Hmm.
see less of it. But because there's a $3 billion plus industry in visual effects and we service like 1 or 2% of that, I believe our personal experience of it is a growth curve again. So
Understood.
it's hard for me to separate the two, but you're looking at the macro and I'm just looking through our lens.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. I was actually curious, Duncan. By the way, I mean, for an artist turned founder CEO, you explained the business side of it really very eloquently and you're very articulate on that part. So this is just such a fascinating journey
Well,
for
that's
you.
because I'm terrible at the artistry bit. So maybe I should have been doing this bit at the start. That's not true.
You're very
Well, let's
modest.
call it 50% true.
But I was actually, talking about well-managed companies vis-a-vis badly managed companies. When Technicolor MPC went down, were you surprised, or were
No,
you just
no.
said, "Oh, you saw that coming"?
Oh, God. I mean, 3 years ago or more. But
Wow.
I think I saw that coming from if you treat people poorly,
Yep.
they will go eventually,
Yeah.
or the quality of the work will fade eventually. If you overtrade if you massively overtrade and underbid to scoop up market share, if you want 50% of this market, good luck to you, because it's a hard to predict thin margin business.
Mm.
That would mean you would need the most exceptionally dedicated team who all want you to succeed. And to get 8,000 people to want you to succeed is a very difficult cultural or cult that you have to build a religion around that, right? You can't
Yes.
just do it in a year or two. You've got to
Yeah.
manage that cash so well. And the minute you start not delivering shows by a month or 2 months or 3 months or 1 year, and that show has to rebuild its marketing strategy around a VFX delivery. These are the things that give you these enormous warning signals of people are going to get scared with where their money's going, what the quality services, and it was quality of service. Their work is still the best work out there, the most groundbreaking, epically mental work, like Lion
Wow.
King. Crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Almost
yeah, yeah.
just, and on a trajectory of ever increasing quality until over just the whole thing overheated and spent a lot of money. The IPO raised a phenomenal amount of cash, which very quickly got spent on phenomenally expensive property, which didn't make sense to me. They weren't moving into cloud. They were putting CapEx boxes under the desk, which I think is regressive, but at that
Wow.
scale may be prohibitive to have cloud. There were just a lot of decisions being made that from an external point of view, I felt that for the shareholders who went in an IPO at that value to get cash back
Hmm.
looked very sketchy. And within having an earnings call within 12 months of that initial
Oh,
IPO was
nice.
sketchy, very,
Yeah.
very, very, very sketchy. And then it was a fairly slow bleed out looking for various refinancing and then delisting. And then all the things they had to then go and do was very, very damaging. And it was all done in public because they'd IPO'd. So their
Wow.
laundry was out for everyone to see and listen into. So I was sad for the artists who were taken so far down that journey and really crushed to try and deliver and back up decisions that have been made by people who weren't maybe in that artist environment and understood what they had to do to try and to backtrack out of it. But we saw it coming culturally, you could almost say many, many, many years ago, and then fiscally, a couple of 3 years beforehand.
Fascinating. That's a great, just trying to parse out what's happened with them. Quality of service and bad financial management kind of
Yeah,
is,
and debt.
and the
Their
debt.
debt, their leverage. They were crazy leveraged at one point. So I think a godsend for us as a much smaller company without the headaches. And I certainly wouldn't be judging individual characters. That that machine fell apart eventually, right? That's what I'm
Right,
saying here.
right,
But carrying very significant debt in a thin margin business, if you've got to
right.
refinance that debt and you have a low margin year on a lower volume of work, you're doing a death spiral at that point. So I would just say to anyone, get investment, but don't take debt.
Fascinating. No, I think again, this is we've seen the pattern repeat with a few companies, and I think Technical was just one very fascinating collapse, very sudden.
Mm, mm.
Um, one question that I was wanting to also understand from your perspective was relating to the UK market. You talked about
Yeah.
just a lot of work that's returned back to the UK. I know that this is also on the back of all sorts of incentives, industry initiatives. Just the ecosystem trying to figure out the right things to do. Can you talk about the two or three big factors that have led to a lot of that work coming back to the UK?
The biggest, I mean, obviously the initial tax incentive scheme way back when put us on the map, built out the best combination in the world, in my opinion, and many studios' opinions of both crew, so production, and visual effects. I
Okay.
think uniquely in a small space, so London is small, right? And so you go from Pinewood or Shepperton to central London, you've got everything you need in one ecosystem.
Hmm.
Really, really highly talented. And I think something that gets overlooked all the time is I think the British sensibility and diplomacy around creative discussion with um, quite difficult, quite emotionally involved people. I think the Brits are just quite good at diffusing and
Hmm.
delivering, and the service industry. I think we're quite good at the service industry, and visual effects is a service industry. So
Okay.
I think there's a cultural piece that sits well with people coming here. Maybe we're polite. It's the Hugh Grant effect. I don't know, but it seems to attract American clients for sure. And then, but the whole thing is economics. So we've got quality, right? We have quality. We've got quality of service. We've got, well, maybe we had, but we certainly have Europe as well, driving great creative talent into the UK, and hopefully that can continue and be repaired somewhat.
Hmm.
And then the more recent reduction of the cap. So we got rid of the 80%, took it to 100. You need 10% to qualify overall global spend. And now you can actually bring your adjusted VFX hit to a degree, has made it kind of a 30-ish% guaranteed, or maybe 30% tax rebate, which is very, very attractive because you're twinning quality of delivery with competitive pricing. But I would argue we do miss out on a whole chunk of work because it has to be 10% of your overall spend, and it has to be culturally tested, right? You know, the culture test. So you need to score the point system to have it qualify. But I would say, given the state of Rachel Reeves' Treasury, given the mission for UK growth, our wish to be slightly more involved with the EU again, why do you need a cultural test? Like, I just don't know what that even means. Get revenue into the UK. So lift the test, get rid of the test, do a 2 million minimum, just 2 million minimum spend. And after that, you qualify for the current tax system. VFX only, shoot only, doesn't matter what you do. Bring your money here and spend it with us, and we will deliver time and time again. That will bring in, I guarantee, an enormous flurry of work, because I speak to producers all the time who are like, can't make the 10% work. You know, we're going to take that bit to Montreal or increasingly Australia. And I don't know what the blockers are, because I am not. I mean, Neil Hatton's done a great job. UK Screen Alliance over here, amazing job.
Yes.
And if we just pushed it that last bit, I think there'd be an influx of work, and it would help our creative skill set economy in you know, billion plus within a couple of years.
Wow. That is, again, another fascinating sort of turnaround, especially post-strikes. I think we've absolutely seen certain markets dominate and you know, bounce back. I think UK has just been very smart with that.
Yeah, but could go better, could turbocharge it for sure.
Understood.
Yeah.
Perfect. So coming back to Outpost, you know, at this point, which are the top three countries that contribute to the most amount of work in your company?
Well, we're only in 3, so Canada, the UK, and India are my top 3 countries.
And is that where the work also comes from in a big way?
Oh, sorry, where the work's that's where the work's delivered from.
Comes from. Where does the business come from? Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, all the money comes from America, right? Even if it was a BBC production, it's going to be co-funded by Amazon or something, right? So we work with all the streamers, all the major studios.
Okay.
So that, and you know, if we're working with working title, very, very British company, it'll still be Universal will have a hand in that, or Amazon will have a. There's so many co-pros, but the money flows predominantly from America, and it flows back to America as well. So America does very well, which is why Trump needs to chill out on the tariff chat, because it doesn't make any sense to. Of course, it doesn't make any sense. Let's not get into that. But I'm not too worried about that. I don't know. But I go to America a lot. All our client relationships are, you know, the executive relationships are there. But then when it comes to actually doing it, and it is a combination of here, LA, and Montreal. And then we have the most incredible team in India, who are so highly motivated. They're incredibly customer service, client kind of focused culturally as well, just getting better and better skill sets all the time. Really impressive work ethic coming out of India as well. And we absolutely mandate to be one outpost, so one company, 3 countries, but the same treatment, the same culture, the same everything. We can make as homogenous as possible across all 3 sites is our goals. We don't have any favoritism, right? They have skill sets and specialisms.
Right. Fascinating. No, that gives us a pretty good picture about, you know, just the work culture as well as the work. You know, Duncan, we've actually spent a lot of time on macroeconomic factors. We've talked about Brexit, strikes, COVID, and the impact of that. We talked about there's quite an interesting case study discussion today that we had about Technicolor and MPC. Let's move to the other big topic that's a factor of change, right? Technology. So what's happening in that area? I'd love to get your views about some of the new tooling that's coming up as far as special effects and VFX is concerned. A lot of automation in post.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about, what kind of opportunities and challenges are you seeing just caused by new tech, AI, gaming engines, and
Mm-hmm.
everything that's interconnected with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. It's a big question. How long have you got? I mean, so if it's driven from economics, but it always has been, and technology has been the driver of all visual effects ever. So I strongly recommend anyone watching this goes and watches Light and Magic on Disney Plus. It charts the history of ILM from George Lucas, who's a director who wants to do crazy things that no one knows how to do. So he chucks some money at some people and says, just work it out. And that's been the story of visual effects ever since. And there was a time when they were really just a model shop with a motion control rig and some very basic optical effects and what have you. And there's a time when CG started to evolve and the Pixar machines came into play. And there was a lot of cultural resistance. There was excitement, there was opportunity, there was a lot of fear. There was everything you would expect with change, because humans really struggle with change, is exactly what's happening now. And then ILM went on to predominantly adopt the digital technologies, and the legacy that slowly dwindled was the model making, right? And it charts it. The documentary charts it very emotionally and beautifully and all the rest of it. But for anyone who really didn't let go of the model making, they eventually ran out of work. And so my opinion of AI is very similar. It is another tool, and you'll hear everyone say it's the paintbrush, not the painter. And I agree entirely. The painter, the person operating the machine, talking to the director, aligning a group of people around a common vision, is a human being, right? And will never be replaced, because there isn't a need to do that. Yeah. But the tools we use should constantly get better and better and easier and easier. So you can call it a tool and it's fine. You can call it AI and everyone's a bit like, ugh, scary. So we've been using AI for decades anyway. We just didn't know it really. Gen AI is the one that should, that generally provokes a heated debate amongst artists, because where did it learn from is an ethical question that we won't do today, because we don't have anything to do with that. But will it replace me? And I think what we need to be really mindful of is, as long as we all stay ahead of what the tools are, how can we use them, build them into our pipelines, build them into our workflows, little by little, and stay on top of them, and we stay in control and they become the solution, not the problem. Right. And I would say to any youngsters out there looking at visual effects, not to be disheartened by all the AI chat online, and really just look at where can you put those tools into your daily workflow. If you're a matte painter, if you're match move artist, it doesn't really matter where you are in the process. You could be an asset builder. Have a look at what tools are out there, play with them. And if you take those tools to your line manager or your boss and say, I think this would be good, they're going to say, you're brilliant. Get on with it. Stick it in there. Right. Because you just made the process quicker. You made the client experience better. And where we want to put tools, and they may be AI, or they may just be Lambda functions in AWS that automate 20-step processes instead of a coordinator having to tick 20 boxes, right? Why wouldn't the machine do it so the coordinator can speak to people and use their human skills? Wherever we put those changes, the whole principle here is to reduce overtime, give people a better work-life balance, give more breathing space to your EBITDA. And if you make more money, you can pay people more money, especially if they can make more money in less time. So it's a good thing. And then push some money back into R&D to stay ahead of this curve as well, because we are not well capitalized business in visual effects, full stop. I think Weta are, because they sold a large chunk to Unity years ago for a couple of billion, but most companies are in a fairly debty place and they're not making enough margin to reinvest in technology. So we need to be cleverer with our tool sets, and we need to get our unit cost down internally. So that's kind of my piece on where are we going with it? Well, it's everywhere. It's in do I use lawyers as much as I need to? No, I use ChatGPT for the first 6 calls, save myself a couple of grand. and then maybe use a lawyer for the final letter. I'm not saying I'm in court all the time, but should I be, that's what I'd be doing. And so I use it in weird ways that have got nothing to do with visual effects really. And the generative aspects of it, we're not seeing final picture, we're not seeing 4K, we're not seeing the controls and the directability, but we should assume that one day we will be, and we want to be the ones driving that, not the ones on the pointy end of that.
No, that totally makes sense. And I'm sure, some of the things that you referenced, it can also save time, maybe help in the initial iterations and initial
Yeah.
ideation, just
Yeah.
cut down more of that time on concept building. And
Oh God, yeah, totally. I mean, if everyone, I think most of the money savings that the studios are looking for from visual effects are actually process driven. They're not magic silver bullet tools that make your furry creature run across the screen quicker. They're really not, because we'll always want to tweak that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think communication, locking edits, getting an early understanding of how, let's say you've got 10 shots with just green screen in it. It takes a long time to get an edit working around that because it's an empty edit. But if we can do version ones the same day, because we've got auto roto, auto match move, auto matte paint, but to a medium quality, we can get consensus. Then we can lock it, and then we can polish the final image and spend our money finishing things rather than testing things out, which is the right way around that we should be doing it. And we definitely are seeing more ability to get consensus more early around visual concepting and post-viz because of these tools.
Fascinating.
Which is good for everyone.
Which is good for, which is great for everyone in the business. Duncan, in the last segment, I want to sort of talk about 2026. We are at the end of 2025, nearly. Let's start with your New Year's resolutions. Where are you wanting to spend more time? In 2026, saying that, oh, you know what, like this has been on my plate. I need to do more of this as a CEO.
As a CEO, you don't mean yachting in the Bahamas then? Because that's obviously the answer, right?
We can talk about that, but maybe another podcast for that one.
Yeah, let's do another podcast. New Year's resolutions within the business. I think what we're going through at the moment is somewhat of a transformation in the business. We restructured everything around a really centralized, clear communication, and we are building out a learning and development platform to communicate the new way. Well, we've rebuilt the AWS structure, so we've got this CI/CD development. So we're continuously deploying and developing quick wins all the time into the pipeline. And I would love to see that progress and the learning and development platform to progress. So there is a constant update and learning cycle that everyone in the company understands they can go to, add to, contribute to. Because if I come all the way back to one of my founding principles, which is retain knowledge in the business, the more the business grows and the faster the rate of technology expands out, the more we need to just take a bit of time to record what we learn and share it with everyone else. And I think if we could become more efficient, more effective within our own internal workflows and processes, we could free up a lot of that profitability. We could free up more training time. We could create better career pathways and give clearer routes through the business for people with ambition and let them realize their journey through visual effects. So it's a project that we tried. It started because I think COVID knocked the stuffing out of us. We had a project called Waypoint, which was this learning and development platform, and it was started with such promise. So that's not, I'd call it a pet project, but I think it's an absolute core function to provide us with a really professional working personal development culture that benefits the company and that ticks the client box of the client service box as well. Because if everyone becomes more excellent at what they do, that should be felt in the deliveries. So I would love to see that. I would love to see that really evolving. And I think it will. I think it will. Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost, it kind of houses the company's best practices and makes that more widely available. We talked a little bit about reskilling before we started the call. And maybe my hunch is that it helps reskill a host of folks with best practices that someone within the department has found, and then transmitting that to the rest of the crew.
Yeah,
and the rest of the
absolutely that. So take the super experienced people
yeah,
and they record their best practices,
right,
and then
right,
everyone benefits from it rather than that person have to explain it. I mean, it's pretty
yeah,
basic stuff, but you'd be amazed how long it takes to build out these systems in a production environment where we are delivering shows day in, day out.
right.
Creating some carve out time to improve our environment-led education and learning platform is a big way of just boosting the business forward, especially as we're across multiple countries and we need everything to be done in a specific way. Um,
And
I haven't thought about other New Year's resolutions as yet, but just getting that order and structure around clarity in the business is a really satisfying piece of work that I think is going to be happening this year.
no, that sounds like a great project, and in the
Mm.
right spot. You know, last question, Duncan, for you was really about growth plans for 2026. Big growth here. I mean, I'm sure you're hoping for a big growth here, but how's it going to
Well,
happen in your best estimate?
we don't need vast growth. We are
Mm,
absolutely focused on effective delivery.
okay.
So we would like to see, if we even had 20% in 26, I'd be surprised, just because the market is maybe not quite stabilized yet.
Yeah.
We would love to see stability in the market, first of all. Um, we've got some very, very interesting projects, which I can't mention, which have got big creatures in them that I'm quite excited to potentially be getting involved in. Hero creatures, as opposed to a lot of the supporting creature work we've done. And we've got our usual repeat business across a whole bunch of series and that we're really fond of as well. So I think what we're really doing is a solid year with no mega disasters in the industry, no strikes, no crazy governments, just everyone chill out for one
Yeah.
year, please, and make some nice content in a calm and lovely way. And then we can
Yeah.
get back to growth and all the rest of it in 27. But just one year of normal behavior would be a delight.
That is so well said and so well articulated. Duncan, for a VFX artist turned founder CEO, you tell great stories on the business side, on the macroeconomics factors, as well as your own approach to quality, client servicing, retention of knowledge. This has been a really, really fun and eye-opening conversation. Thank you so much
Well,
for talking to the Vitrina community today.
not at all. Well, I've enjoyed it. Thanks very much. I hope it's of use and that your 100,000 viewers don't feel they just wasted an hour of their life.
This is going to be for a lot of folks who are sort of learning the business, and
Mm,
and we have a lot of folks who really want to keep abreast with what's happening. This has been a masterclass from that perspective. Thank you
perfect.
so much for talking to us.
Not at all. Thanks, Atul. Speak to you soon.
Absolutely.